Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real Estate Right Now, where we talk about real estate matters that matter to you. My name is Jay Izso. We are live here from Lindencraft Team Studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina, part of the Greater Research Triangle Park. Apologize that we are late for those who've been waiting for us live.
Technical?
For the last 2 weeks, we've had technical difficulties, and it has been just a challenge. So the scheduled show for last week, we're doing this week. And we even still had technical challenges, so we apologize for that.
I blame you.
Thank you. You should, because it's on me. We are going to talk about rebuilding credit. What you need to do, what you should know, how you need to look at it. You got to have a mindset shift clearly when it comes to rebuilding credit, and we want you to do that because we want you to be ultimately successful in rebuilding your credit. So what I did was I brought somebody who's rebuilt a lot of people's credit. And that trail is not always easy. So the multi-talented Paul Fitz is joining us again. And I say again and again and again and again. It seems that he comes on here often.
I thought I was co-host.
Yeah, I mean,
do I have like credits?
At some point, you're going to be a co-host here. But you've rebuilt a lot of people's credit.
A ton of credit over the years. Yes, sir.
And you know, it took you a mindset and behavior to get into bad credit.
Well,
and
of course,
and so that means,
actually, you know what? Maybe not even a mindset, but maybe there's a lack of mentality to it. You know, versus saying this is my mindset, I'm going to do this on purpose. Right. You know, it's a lack of
naivety.
Yeah, of course. And a lot of people have bad credit because of naivety.
And don't we have to be honest about money in general? That handling money is a skill. And we are not taught. I was not taught in college or grad school how to handle money. In all the business classes I took.
Right. Of course not.
There was never one class on how to manage money.
Right.
How to save money.
Right.
But you know what they did talk a lot about? How to spend money.
Of course. It's easy. It's like water.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we live in an economy, or in an economic world. Let me phrase it this way. In an economic world where we can sit behind a computer,
right,
or this gadget.
What's that?
It's the phone. We can sit behind with a phone, and what we can do is we can just spend.
We can order the world to our door. Didn't we talk about this earlier?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And what I found is that it's very easy to spend money.
Yeah. Let's go to anybody who knows me, knows anything about me. I'm a comic book freak, not a geek. I'm a freak. I've got a collection that'll rival pretty much anybody's. And I always like to look at the Amazing Spider-Man for this one little phrase that we should know about money or credit or anything else. With great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
It is on the insert of every single Spider-Man comic book that exists. We should always understand that money is power. Credit is power.
Right.
But there is responsibility to everything that we must do.
Right.
We have to make decisions. I mean, unless your name is Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or somebody like that, we have to make decisions every day.
Right.
And we've talked about the different decisions that we need to make even in the past.
Right.
2 years ago, we talked about, how egg prices were spiking up and you were buying those $10 eggs,
organic eggs,
the organic eggs, and you're spending $10 on them, and even though I was like spending $4 and I was still mad at $4, eggs have gone up again. And then we had to make more decisions about what we spend on.
Right.
Credit's the same way. And to tie the two on that, over the last 4 years, this nation has gone into more credit card debt than it has ever seen.
Right.
More than $1 trillion in credit card debt. And people weren't out there buying new cars and new boats and yachts. And they were buying groceries.
They were surviving.
They were trying to survive on credit.
Right.
And for a lot of people, those eggs are going to hatch.
Yeah, they do.
The chickens are going to come home to roost.
Yeah.
We can use all these eggs and chicken. Anyway.
Well, I'm originally a farm boy, so I'm comfortable with it.
So, right.
I am.
So again, there's going to be decisions that have to be made.
Right.
And if your credit is overwhelming and you start missing payments and you start dinging your actual credit scores and whatnot, it will affect you on your ability to buy a house, buy a car. Your interest rates will be affected by this.
Right.
So, if we go to the original premise of I had bad habits that created my bad credit, what can I do to get out of this?
Well, and I want to just pause for a second
Sure.
here and focus on that for a second, because I talk about this all the time with my coaching clients, but I talk about this even when I'm on stage speaking, and that is we lack self-awareness.
Yeah, we don't know.
We're not very good at our own self-awareness, meaning especially in certain areas of our life. So we don't think it's like eating. Money and eating, I think, go hand in hand. Here's the thing. We think we're eating pretty healthy, but we're really not eating that healthy.
Right.
And I think the money is the same way. We think we're being pretty reasonable.
Okay.
We're okay with our money.
We're okay.
But we're not really okay
We're not
with our
okay.
money.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be a self-awareness piece that happens with all of this, that you've got to get really honest and self-aware with yourself about what are you really doing?
Yeah, discipline.
And I'll have to be honest with you. It wasn't until probably the late 90s that I saw my first P&L.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Right.
I mean, I never had seen a P&L.
What's this?
I didn't even know my profits and losses, right? And I didn't know what that was. And when you look I look at mine every week now. When you look at your profits and losses, like what are you spending?
What's coming in? What's going out?
And you start looking at, oh my gosh, so many of us have these like revolving credit charges that we don't even realize that we have.
Right. Oh, there's so many people out there just they're paying the minimums. Oh, I'm fine. It's a $5,000 credit limit. I'm at $3,700.
Right.
I got room, whatever.
Right.
Here's the $40 minimum payment,
Right.
And people are totally not aware.
In fact, I've started doing a better job of even tracking some of the stuff that I can afford. It's not that I can't afford it, but I've started looking at how many things that I have that I just automatically pay.
Right.
A really closer look. And so now I'm getting notified when a renewal comes up. And I'm like going, do I really
need
it?
It
was
$9.
Use it? It's $9 a year.
Yeah. Do I need it? Do I use it?
It's $9 a year. And then I went,
I don't need it.
So what am I doing here? What am I doing? So
why did I sign up for this to start with?
And so I got notified that I just paid for another year. And I went, I don't really need this.
Yeah.
And I know it's $9 and I can afford the $9 for a year. I mean, if you calculate
it. Give you $10.
No, I no, but it's just that, I started going, well, how many of these $10 things that I go, I can afford.
Right. But you don't need.
That I just don't need. Right.
And these are, again, all about decisions.
Right.
The decisions that we make are financial decisions.
Right.
So let's go back to credit on this.
Yeah.
Okay. Jay and I had a conversation about this before, and the conversation got deleted in the ether webs. But part of the conversation was, you're a kid in college. There are people with this chalkboard, this board, and these T-shirts at a football game, and they're like, "Hey, if you sign up for a free credit card today, we're going to give you an NC State Wolfpack T-shirt." And these kids are like, "Sign me up! I want the T-shirt." Right. And then they get this card in the mail.
Yep.
And then they start using it, but they don't understand the responsibility behind paying it.
Right.
And then it adds up, and it adds up, and then eventually they've got a $4,000 credit card that they haven't been making payments on, and now their credit is really and truly hurting severely.
Yeah, I don't want to say ruined.
Nothing is ever ruined,
right? Because nothing is ever at the end.
Anything can be fixed. Everything can be fixed.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Everything can be fixed. It just depends on how bad the situation is and how much pain you need to deal with to get it there. So for these younger kids who do this, the first thing that they need to do is they need to get a job. Get a job and start paying on this, pay it down, pay it off. If you let it go into collections or charge off, negotiate with the collection company to try to pay them at a lower, payment, but get your credit back on track.
Right.
You may have to start off with a prepaid credit card. But the most important thing about credit, managing your credit, if I get a $5,000 credit card, I tend to only use 10%.
Okay.
If you want to have good credit, use 30 or less. Better credit scores, 20 or less. Optimal credit scores, 10% of your available credit usage. 10%. You'll always get optimal credit scores. I have I personally, this is the part that will shock everybody. I personally have 19 credit cards, open 19 credit cards, and they all have anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 of limit. Do I ever use them that way? No. Have I ever used them that way?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
But I constantly prove to the credit gods, to credit, that I can manage what they have given me with ease.
Right.
So these credit cards, do I use them for, miles? We talked about the American Express card that you use, for miles or for Delta mileage, or even using the Sky Lounge, or you'll use the renewal fee and get a free airline ticket or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're using the benefits and you're still making the payments and paying it off almost every month, or at least, depending on what happens in your life, trying to pay it down every single month, you're always proving that you can use it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
When the time comes and you've totally messed up, and a lot of people have, there's so many people who have messed up because life comes at you. There is, no matter what it is, medical, you had a car accident, you were out of work it can be anything. Right. It's a matter of what you can do to get it back. There are some people out there that I have looked at their credit reports and I've said, you need to file for bankruptcy. Right. You will never repay this debt. Right. You will never repay
under your current circumstances.
Never repay it.
Unless you get a job that more than doubles your income,
or somebody dies and leaves you $1 million. You're never going to repay it. I can look at their reports.
And that's a reality.
I see it every day. If anybody is in that situation, I try to gauge where they are. I'm like, what? If you file a Chapter 13, I talk about 13s first. If you file a Chapter 13, the courts will negotiate down a settlement. They will negotiate these debts down. Mm-hmm. You can make a monthly payment to the trustee of the court. Mm-hmm. And then if you've made at least 12, you might possibly qualify for a mortgage after 1 year of being in a Chapter 13. Mm-hmm. 1 year, 12 months later, it's possible. Mm-hmm. If you go into a 7, it could be 2 to 3 years. It just depends on the type of situation you were in. We, as mortgage lenders, talked about extenuating circumstances, but rarely does the extenuating circumstances actually meet what an underwriter is looking for. So generally speaking, if you do a 7, it's at least 3 years before you buy a home. Okay. How do you rebuild your credit after you go through these events?
Right.
Generally speaking, it's very hard for somebody to restart credit, but they have to. They have to restart credit eventually. The majority of my people, I tell them, go to your bank, get a $1,000 prepaid credit card, use it for $100 every month, pay it off. $100 a month, pay it off.
So prepaid credit cards.
Yeah.
There's something else that you just said here, though, that occurred to me, from my own psychological background. And that is, I think sometimes the difficulty with money in general and spending money is, we want to feel good. And so what we'll do is we'll spend the money.
Sugar high.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, it's the sugar high, right? We like the sugar. Yeah. It's not healthy for us, but we like it. But what happens is we get this emotional rush from a purchase. I know for a fact that the research has shown is that, like, when we make a purchase of something, the areas in our brain that light up
endorphins.
The endorphins kick in, but then the dopamine kicks in, and the same areas in the brain light up for food, water, and sex when we make a purchase. So it's I
don't want to tell you where I rate on that.
I understand, but it's very powerful.
Right.
That when we're making purchases, it's a very powerful thing for our brain. But this is the point where we have to go, okay, can I get the rational part up here, this part of the brain, to start thinking through the future part? How is this going to affect me down the road?
Yeah.
And so let's take the person, regardless of how they got there.
Sure.
And they come into your office.
Right.
And you look.
They got 520 credit scores.
And you're looking at the scores, and they're going, okay, what do I have to do? What's the first advice you give them?
Yeah. I'll always look at the credit report. Mm-hmm. And depending on how many line items there are that are actually bad line items, let's just say a person comes in and they have like 11 items on their credit report that are they're just completely shot. If we're talking about an amount of money that's $10,000, $15,000 or less,
Mhm.
then I'll say, listen, you can tackle this. You can handle this based on your income.
Mhm.
What you need to do is start with the smaller items first, so you can eliminate these line items, right?
Mhm.
So if you have a $70 charge off, I'll say, hey, contact this company, this collection company. Here's their phone number. Here's everything about them. Here's the account number, and see if they'll take $50 for it. Well, will they? Sure. They'll negotiate. These guys, they're not in business to ruin your credit. They're in business to make money. They have purchased these line items for less than what they're showing, but they have the right to the full amount. It's their ability to negotiate at that point. They want something versus nothing, right? So if you have a $70 collection and you can pay it off for $50, you've just saved $20 and you've eliminated a line item that was a collection on your credit report. At this point, you make sure you get a letter stating it now has a zero balance, and you do that going up. The next one's 90, the next one's 200, the next one's 300. Negotiate each one of them, the $90 to $50, the $300 to $175. You can do this all the way through, and people can do this on their own without hiring companies or anybody else. They can do this. It takes a little time and a little bit of money, but they can clean up these credit issues on their own.
So I'm hearing a little bit of a debt snowball. So like if you paid $50,
kind of the opposite of,
right, where you start with the lowest, and we pay $50, and it was 70,
and you've
right,
eliminated.
So by the way, don't spend that $20 that you saved.
Right.
Roll that into the next highest one, right?
Yeah. You've saved the $20. The next one's 90.
Right.
Negotiate with that guy.
Negotiate down to 70.
Right.
It's the same $50 you just spent.
Right.
Right.
And you've cleaned off 2 debt items just that way.
So now we can roll that. Now it's $40.
Right.
And let's say the next one. Now I've got that 50 plus 40. I've got $90 that I can negotiate. I think that's a really smart.
It's easy for people to do. I think the biggest problem that we have for people who have credit issues, they're afraid to talk to anybody about it. They're afraid. They're embarrassed.
Shame.
They're like, oh, I can't buy anything. Sure, you can. Why do you think you can't?
Right.
Let's look at it. And I've had people in the past. They say, oh, well, the system is rigged. Credit is the most fair system in the entire planet.
Right.
You can make it the greatest system. It is a tool.
Yeah.
You can make it work for you, or you can make it, crush you for the rest of your life. You have the ability to make these decisions. And even credit that has been, just damaged in your mind beyond belief, you can still get beyond it and rebuild, even though you've had these credit events happen in your life.
There's got to be a point at which you're helping people kind of rebuild the credit so they can purchase a home, that there has to be some conversation, I assume, and I may be wrong, that you're going to have to change your lifestyle here a little bit.
I tell everybody they have to make decisions all the time. I have clients who come into my office, they make $70,000 a year with an $800 car payment. And I'm like, what are you doing? You're paying as much on your car as you are for your part of the rent that you're living in that apartment with your roommate. You're paying as much.
Right.
I make a pretty good living. I do well every single year. And I've never had more than a $300 car payment in my life.
Right.
Because I'm not looking for the status. I'm looking for conveyance.
I can attest to this, by the way. I've known him for about 30 years, and I can just tell you the cars that he drove.
Yeah, they're all crap.
If any one of them was $300 a month, he was overpaying. I'm just telling you that right now.
Yeah, right. I go get the Camry, and then somebody else who's in the same line of work, he goes out and gets the BMW. Now, my wife's cars are different. That's a whole different on story. Her, but that's not me.
But there's a good point in this, and here's the point that I think is that so often. And I say this to people all the time. We stopped buying new cars years ago.
Right.
Because it's a depreciating asset.
I've never bought a new car.
It's a depreciating
in my entire
asset.
life.
When you drive it off the lot, you've lost 30 to 40%.
I go to Northridge and drive around and look at those rich those houses and whatnot. And there's a couple of nice cars for sale and they'll negotiate down. I don't even have to go to the car lot.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just know that we think we have to have new, especially when it comes to a vehicle,
care less.
and a new vehicle,
Depreciating asset.
and it's expensive.
Yeah.
Whereas you can get
insurance is higher, gas, whatever. You can go down the oil change are higher, whatever.
And my dad, God rest his soul, my dad never wrapped his mind around it, because my dad's philosophy was buying a used car means that you're buying somebody else's problem.
Whatever.
Right. But can I tell you something? Buying the right used car, take it to your mechanic. This is what I've done. Even if it's off a reputable person, like a reputable salesperson,
Right.
I take the car to my mechanic.
Right.
I have them look it over.
Sure.
It may cost me $25, but they look it all the way over from every little piece, and they'll come back and they'll say to me, you know what, this is clean, or they'll say to me, you know what, this has got an issue.
Right.
And now we have this thing called Carfax.
Yeah.
Which can be accurate, but a lot of cars don't have Carfax.
Sure.
But that's just one area.
I've got a friend of mine. She's selling her Tesla. She bought it brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And when she went to trade it in, and they told her how much
they
would pay her for it,
right?
She said, "I'd rather burn it,
right,
than trade it in for that."
Right.
I'm sorry. Brand new vehicles depreciate massively. There's nothing that gains in that.
And it's true of most of the things that we purchase.
Yeah. My house wasn't brand new. It was used.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
I don't care.
But if you think about everything you purchase, everything that you purchase is depreciating.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Except
for a house.
That's where we need to go back to the fact that I need to help you rebuild your credit so you can buy a house that doesn't depreciate.
So we have something here from Sergey Kessel. Says, I don't think everybody understands what you're talking about.
We're talking about credit,
rebuilding credit.
Yeah.
Rebuilding credit, if you got yourself into a credit spot, how do we get yourself out of it?
Yep.
Paul's mortgage lender, who has worked with a lot of people rebuilding their credit. That's what we're doing. So if you're just joining us late, that's what we're doing right now. So Sergey, thanks for pointing that out.
Of course, my wife jumped in and she was talking about the cars.
Yeah.
And she said, not until I came along.
Yeah, not until she came. Yeah. Then his wife chimes in.
We know, baby. We know. Yeah.
So, all right. So
my credit's still fine, even with you though. And I love you.
So, all right. So we have to go through the line items. We look at, you owe some money here.
Right.
You owe some money there.
Pay it off.
Pay it off.
Zero.
When I think people have a timing issue, they'll go, okay, so what if I do all this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And by the way, it could take months. It could take years.
I've worked with one couple for 2 years to get their credit right.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
I mean, but there again, I'm really a doctor at what I do. Everybody who comes into my life, in my professional life, I examine them individually. The next person is not going to be examined the exact same way. Every loan officer that we work with, here at the Linda Crafton team, we all, look at people who are individuals. We look at them as an individual basis. There is no blank slate for everybody.
Right.
We diagnose their problems, or some people, obviously, they don't have any. But if somebody comes into my office and I look at their situation, if I think that they can do it, that they can manage this, then I'm going to give them all the coaching that I can possibly give them to say, you can do this on your own. You don't have to pay some company, $300 a month, who are going to do the exact same thing that you
could do.
You can use that $300 a month you were going to spend it with this company, and you can fix your problems.
Yeah.
And
so I think the other thing is that depending on the depth of your credit, it is going to change the timeline here.
Correct. Yeah.
And so then this requires you to be persistent, perseverant.
Right.
And here's the big word. And everybody, this is the dreaded D word is
discipline.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Discipline.
Discipline, responsible.
Yeah. People don't want to hear about discipline, because what that means when we say discipline is that I got to give up something. And you know what? You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. If you go to the gym, you're going to give up some weight. That's not a bad thing. Right. So if you realize that every single day that you have the choices to make on what you can buy, do you really need to go to Starbucks to spend $6 on a cup of coffee? Or should you have a Keurig machine that you can spend 25, 30 cents on a K-cup?
I got a better one.
Yeah.
I was in Target and they had Mr. Coffee programmable coffee makers.
Okay.
$20.
That's what, 5 Starbucks visits
That's
right there?
5 Starbucks
What do you
visits.
need?
And then you
Yeah.
go to your local grocery store,
Yeah.
buy a bag of coffee.
Right.
I don't care if you have to spend $10 for that bag
Right.
of coffee because it's your favorite coffee.
You're still going to save money.
You're still saving.
Every time I see
Yeah.
somebody with a selfie and they've got a Starbucks cup or whatever, I'm like, that coffee is not that great. No offense to Starbucks or whatever. It is not worth going.
Actually, I
into
don't
depth.
mind offending Starbucks because
I'm
really
just
their
not-
coffee isn't good.
It is.
Sorry.
Meaning though that your spending habits would say, hey, start this whatever latte, something said blah, 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 $8. Meanwhile, for $2 or $1 at home, I can be having a cup of coffee that'll get me through my morning, and I'm okay at that point, and I've just saved $7. It's all a totality.
Right. I that's the part. And my apologies, Starbucks. I know that people love Starbucks. I just don't find it very good. I just don't. So my apologies to the people at Starbucks. I apologize. I know that you have jobs, and I appreciate what you do there. I just don't care for your coffee. But here's the thing.
Hot chocolate is great there. Whatever.
I'm allergic to chocolate, so
Okay,
there's that problem. But I do like your restaurants because I love hanging out there. But here's the thing: is that there's little thing. I don't think what we think about is all the little things that add up.
Right, 1,000 cuts.
I think what we're doing is we're seeing. Well, it must be something big.
No,
it's never something
1,000
big.
cuts.
Right. It's the little things that have just
Right.
added up over the course of time that you're doing. And oftentimes, and I hate to say this is an old phrase. It's been around for 100 years. People like keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, well, that's not what you should be doing. You should be keeping up with yourself.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But they compare.
Yeah.
Linda has taught me this phrase about comparing because we compare. Oftentimes, we'll compare what we have to what other people have or our friends have.
Right.
And she says, the phrase she says is compare and despair. You know what? If you keep comparing yourself to what other people have or don't have, you're going to be in despair. And then what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to spend to keep up, but you can't because you're not in their situation. And by the way, can I just say this about a lot of your friends? Chances are
they're in debt.
They're in debt.
They're in debt. They went $100,000 in debt for that vehicle
and
or
so,
whatever.
And so, this is
I can afford the payment until you can't.
Until you can't afford the payment. Because you can't be living, and I know you say this to the people, you need to get out of debt so you're not living on the edge.
Right. You're sweating bullets every month. That's a problem.
Yeah. If you're going, if the phrase goes, I don't know where I'm going to get the money for.
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Or if there's a phrase in your house, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Or, that if you've got those type of phrases in your head, you're already in trouble.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you're overthinking it, you put yourself in a position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to 2019, 2020, when we realtors and loan officers are doing 10, 12 deals a month.
Right.
And we're packing it away. We are making more money hand over fist. Right. We're just bringing it in. Right. But I had so many of my LO buddies out there buying brand new cars at that point. I'm like, yeah, I ain't doing that. Yeah. I'm making the decision to drive my 17-year-old car. Why? Right. Because it's paid for. All I have to do is pay for gas, tires, oil change every now and then, brake job, whatever. Right. I don't need to go out and buy new. I don't have anything to prove to anybody.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. If
people have this mentality of, I'm going to pack it away because I know that we're not going to be doing 10, 12 closings every month in the next 3 or 4 years because you've lived through these cycles as a professional.
Right.
Right. Then you would have definitely saved money to be prepared for these times. Right. So that's why I tell people when times are flush, save your money. Make sure you're paying off your bills. Make sure you're paying off your credit debt. Make sure you're paying off the things that could possibly impact you later on your credit. I read, Sergey, I love you, brother, but we're not talking about building right now. So stop it with the General Assembly. I love you, bro, but this ain't the topic. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So, by the way, you know what? Linda Kraft just chimed in here. Paul's awesome at coaching people in credit and life.
I
And
love you,
that's-
Linda.
that-
I
that's-
love your wife.
Yeah, I do too. That's Linda Kraft there going in. We got just a minute or two here. Any other further advice that you would give people who are trying to rebuild their credit that really stands out to you? Because I think we covered a lot of the things. It is an emotional, mental, and behavioral shift.
I think it's the embarrassment. I think it's the shame or whatever it is. I think that's a mental hurdle that people need to get over. Okay. Right. And what I mean by this is, if you think that you're the only person who's ever had a credit event or credit problems in your life, you're not. It's common, right? But it's easy to overcome. And like I've stated earlier, I've had to tell people to go file for bankruptcy. I've had to have that conversation with them because I saw what their income looks like, and I've seen other things that goes on in their life. Yeah, but you need to look at that as a tool, not as if, oh my God, this is going to end my life. It's not. Right. It's not. There are things that you can do to overcome this. But, if you think that your phone is a tool, if you think your computer is a tool, there's bankruptcy items out there that are tools that will help you rebuild your life, as long as you don't repeat those patterns to put you back. Right. That's what matters.
Well, and you just said something here that just, again, just struck me. And that is, if you're feeling shame or embarrassment, that should be your trigger. You need to do something.
You need to talk to a professional.
Right. If you're feeling that. Yeah. If you're feeling that way. By the way, I think the other part of it is, because you've done this so frequently, there's no judgment.
Oh, I don't care what they did. I don't care what the problem was. I'm here to tell them how to fix it.
Right. Yeah. You're not there to chastise them for what they did. You're here to say, okay, we're here.
Right.
This is what we got to do. Move forward.
Oh no! I mean, you'll hear. Well, what had happened was, I don't care.
Right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't care if it was a comet that came from out of the blue and destroyed your car. Right. I don't care what the problem was. Whatever the problem, it doesn't matter to where we are. Let's figure out how to fix where we are.
Yeah, I think that's so important for you. If you're looking for a really good person to go, hey, I need to rebuild this. I do feel embarrassed. I do feel shame, which we get. There's no judgment. Yeah. He's not worried about what you did in the past. He's worried about what we got to do in the future, what behaviors we got to change in the future.
How do we fix it? How do we make it right?
And how do we make it right? Yeah. This has been a lot of fun, as always. It's always great. I always
love doing the show.
I do. It's so much fun. Tell people, if they want to rebuild their credit, how do they get a hold of you?
Anybody wants to call me, even about a mortgage, just to know about your credit, learn about it, or even to figure out, are you ready or can you buy a house? Feel free to call me. You can reach me on my cell at 919-612-0043. It's 919-612-0043. You can email me at my office, which is pfitts@advantagelending.com. That's pfitts@advantagelending.com. That wasn't real sign language, by the way.
No, I was spelling it out. I was spelling it out. I was pfitts at advantagelending.com. That's what I was doing. It was spelling it, because my sign language is not nearly good enough for me to do anything like that.
My day started at 6. I was at Walmart shopping for groceries this morning. I didn't find your $10 organic eggs. Right.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
I know they don't have them there.
I was texting city council members at 7 a.m. here today, doing the show at 8:30. Got a couple of closing. My beautiful wife, is closing on her largest purchase of her career.
Congratulations.
And then tonight I'll be back here. We're going to do a reverse mortgage seminar tonight.
That's right.
Here at Linda Kraft and team.
So dinner starts at 6:30. And Paul's talk on reverse mortgages starts at 7. Folks, listen, it's here at the Linda Kraft team office at 7300 Six Forks Road. 6:30. I believe they can sign up.
I think they can still sign up. There might be some spaces available.
I think there's some spaces available.
It's going to be a good time. If you're a real estate agent and you want to come by and watch the seminar.
Yeah, if you do not understand what reverse mortgage is, you've probably seen Tom Selleck talk about it on TV, and you don't really understand how that works. I really highly suggest that you come hear what he's going to say.
Yeah,
and that's tonight, May 15th, 2025, 6:30 p.m. Linda Kraft team offices, 7300 Six Forks Road. Listen, even give a call if you can't figure out how you can sign up. Give them a call here. It's 919-235-0007. I'm going to say that again, 919-235-0007. So even if you can't figure it out on the lindacraft.com website, call and get into this, because I'm telling you, he's great. You heard him.
We're going to have some great talks tonight.
But also there's going to be great discussion on how a reverse mortgage actually works. Again, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate
listen,
you.
folks, you had a lot of choices. You chose us. Thank you for doing that. We really appreciate it. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Also, wherever you're listening to the show, give us a 5-star review, especially if you're on Apple Podcasts and you're listening to us right now. A 5-star positive review would be fantastic. We really appreciate that, you doing that. As I say to you everywhere all over the world, thank you so much, and ciao, everybody.